Everybody? I now call the April 24th, 2025 San Diego Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board meeting to order. It is 9:00 a.m. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Schlick. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that Vice Chair Spencer will not be present for today's meeting. And for the record, Member Ross is not present for today's meeting. All remaining board members are participating in person today. Member Engelmann?
Present.
Member Zupo?
Present.
Chair Schlick?
Present.
For the record, that would be Member Ross and Vice Chair Spencer not present with, and we do meet quorum for today's meeting. I would ask the following individuals to please identify yourselves for the record. Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board Counsel.
Present.
Can you please identify yourself for the record?
This is B. George Sakeley. I'm Senior Deputy County Counsel with the Office of County Counsel.
Thank you. Air Pollution Control District staff.
Mary Mahoney, Program Coordinator.
I will now swear in those that wish to provide testimony on any item on today's agenda. This includes petitioners, respondents, and APCD staff. Please raise your right hand for the swearing in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in the matter before this hearing board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Schlick.
We will now move to non-agenda public communication. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to the board on any subject within the board's jurisdiction, but not an item on today's agenda. Mia, are there any members of the public that wish to address the board on this item today?
Thank you, Chair Schlick. Seeing no hands raised and no members present in the conference room, there are no members of the public wishing to provide public testimony on administrative item 8.
Okay, great. So we will now move to the approval of the March 6, 2025 San Diego County Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board Statement of Proceedings. Minutes. Before we proceed, Madam Clerk, have we received any requests from members of the public that wish to address the board today on administrative item B?
Chair Schlick, we have received no requests from members of the public wishing to provide public testimony on an administrative item B today, and with no members present in the conference room, there are no requests to speak on an administrative item B today.
Okay, great. Then let's proceed with comments from district staff and our board members regarding the agenda that is for approval today. And I see it's on the board. Is it also being shared online?
It will be.
Okay.
So the district doesn't have any comments.
Okay. Any comments?
No comments.
No comments.
Okay. And great. And would you just scroll down through it? Yeah, so it looks like we just we approved the proceedings from January and then discussion of the hearing board calendar. Did we table that to today, or I think are we waiting?
That is also noticed in administrative item C, the discussion.
Okay, perfect, great.
However, right now, the only action item would be
to approve these.
inclusive.
Yes. So is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Okay, great.
I second.
Great. So there is a motion by member Engelmann, seconded by member Zupo. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Schlick. Member Engelmann?
Aye.
Member Zupo?
Aye.
Chair Schlick?
Aye.
That motion passes with members Ross and Vice Chair Spencer not present for today's meeting. And all remaining members voting aye.
Okay, great. Okay, we will now move to discussion of the revised 2025 San Diego County Air Pollution Control District hearing meeting calendar. This is a discussion item only.
This would be a
Okay.
discussion item.
Before we proceed, Madam Clerk, have we received any requests from members of the public that wish to address the board today on administrative item C?
Thank you, Chair Schlick. We have received no requests from members of the public to address the board under admin item C. And with no members present, no public members present in the conference room, there are no public members wishing to address this item today.
Okay, then let's proceed with comments from district staff and board members. On administrative item C.
I just want to chime in that I read hearing board rules 1 and 5, and I don't personally see any conflict with changing the meeting time or,
Okay,
or location, as the case may be. Based on the last meeting, I recall we discussed a later starting time. So currently it's 9 a.m. There was discussion about 10 a.m., possibly 9:30. The district can be flexible, I think.
Okay.
One thing that might be worth considering is that we can, if needed, start late. But from what I understand, we would never be able to start early.
yes.
So
Yes, that's one consideration for sure, is that we can always start later than the notice time, but we can never start earlier because that's the notice we give to the public. Yeah, that makes total sense because that's the same with court hearings as well.
So when we were discussing it in the previous meeting that we had, I thought there was an understanding that we could typically meet at 10, but if we had a particularly full agenda and we noticed it for 9 o'clock start, that we could still do that. That making a general change wouldn't lock us into that. Is that not correct?
I think that would have been more of a question for council. Were you briefed on that request to look into it?
I briefly spoke with the clerk about this. I can give you my general thoughts now, or the clerk and I can look at it a bit more. I've dealt with a pretty close to identical issue with one of the other boards I represent. Mia, do you have
The only consideration I would like would be the logistical considerations when it comes to finding meeting space. Also, typically the notices come in before the notices are generated before the next hearing board, so it would be difficult to consider all the board's time schedules before noticing for a possibly impacted agenda. So I just would like the board to consider and council to consider those logistics and the communication of when to decide, or if there's a defining something defining when to decide whether to start a meeting earlier or later.
Yeah, because we have to give like 10-day notice.
Yes.
And then the agenda is posted 7 days.
It usually comes 7 days out.
Yeah.
Yes, and the notice is publicly published and publicly noticed 10 days before the meeting. So
Yeah, so it's like the notice kind of locks us into the time, but the agenda might fill up in those intervening days.
because this is notice for a discussion of this topic. So when you and I briefly discussed this, I thought sort of my role in this was based upon the discussion that happened here today. Because I'm used to normally like the board will direct, meaning like the board of supervisors will direct staff to explore options on an item. And I kind of looked at this in a parallel way, that based upon this discussion, you and I would, at a future hearing meeting rather, would discuss options. So when I said, what was your preference? I should have just said, would you like to treat this like that? Because we could come back with, yeah, I'm sorry, I should have been more complete. And so based upon kind of the discussion today, that's how I was going to approach this, because again, I've dealt with this before, the general rules, you can't start earlier than the notice time. And then it's sort of just the logistics of, let's say you want to start at 10, like what does the rest of the calendar look like? Have we reserved this room with general services, those sorts of things. So that was part of the discussion I was going to have with you based upon this discussion here today.
Okay, I apologize.
No, not at all.
But I did want to throw that in there in the ring, just to make sure that the board does consider those.
That's all good point. And
Limit.
honestly,
It's a limit.
my bringing this up is more hypothetical than anything. Since I've been a board member for the last few years, we haven't run past noon. So needing to start at 9 so that we could finish by 5, it's possible that that could happen.
Mhm.
And if we see a particularly full agenda, I just wanted to understand if we had the discretion or if the chair has the discretion to say, okay, it looks like we've got a full agenda, so let's start at 9 on an exceptional basis if we would run into any problems. And so we've got the issue of logistics and obviously availability of board members. I don't know if there are other considerations on that. It sounds like we need to.
The only other thing I could think of that I'm thinking of right now is just if, whenever it's the day that we start, if we don't get through everything,
Mhm.
then we have to adjourn and go to the next day.
Right,
So that could get sticky too.
right.
So, I mean, and I don't know if we have thought of just starting at 9:15. Would that be enough, like wiggle room for? Like, it's a little bit later, but it's not like a whole hour. But in any event, this is just for discussion today. Any other thoughts today? Since Rule 1 and Rule 5 were mentioned just now, why don't we put those up so that they can be considered and put into context? So Rule 1 is these rules are adopted pursuant to Health and Safety Code Section 40807. In the event of a conflict between these rules and the applicable provisions of the Health and Safety Code, the applicable provisions of the Health and Safety Code shall prevail. These rules shall apply to all hearings before the hearing board of the Air Pollution Control District, which shall be held in the designated hearing room at 1600 Pacific Highway, San Diego, California, unless otherwise specified in the publicly noticed agenda. The meetings may be held via teleconference from time to time in accordance with applicable law. And then Rule 5, hearing board hours. The hearing board will promptly convene the hearing at the time specified in the notice of hearing. The hearing board may recess at the discretion of the chair. It will reconvene promptly at the time specified by the chair. So yeah, neither of those really lock us into a particular time. We do have some discretion setting the time. As far as logistical, we want to be mindful of the logistics, that the notice for the meeting, the date and time and place that we're meeting goes out 10 days prior, but the agenda is not really set until 7 days. And so to the extent that we might have an idea of what the agenda might be prior to the 10-day notice, like sometimes we have a continued check-in regarding a very maybe active or controversial topic or petition that we know may take some time. Maybe we would already know several months prior that we could notice it starting at 9. I would suggest maybe we just consider if 9:15 is a good starting time, because it gives people a little more time to get here. But again, we can always start later than 9:15. But the logistics of if we start at 10, noticing it for an earlier time may be more difficult on our staff.
I'm also curious, do we have a hard stop? Are there reasons why we have to stop at a certain time? Obviously, we've got labor laws and things like that.
It might be like 3, right? 3 or 4.
The only, we actually do not have a hard stop. The only thing that would impact the decision on when to adjourn a meeting would be our logistics,
Okay,
whether we have the meeting space.
okay.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then what about any kind of rules around work hours for staff, for the clerk, for council, for staff?
We would just have to adhere to the typical labor laws.
Okay, so, I mean, that's another
Yeah.
thing that obviously we've got the discretion to do if all parties are willing, so.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, it's
And
good to know what
setting
our options
breaks
are.
and stuff.
It sounds to me like it's not as practical to set a time and then decide to meet exceptionally earlier one day. It would be much more practical for us to either adjourn at the end of whatever time we've got, or have a longer, go later into the afternoon/evening to accommodate the agenda if we needed to. And it's again, I want to make sure that we're all kind of aware this is a very hypothetical, like.
It's hypothetical for our county, but there's other county, things could become more hopping. We never know.
Absolutely.
So some other counties have the board meets several times a week.
Right.
We've got several boards, so it just
And
depends.
if we were to run into that issue, of course, we could reconvene to
Oh,
discuss
yeah.
starting time.
Probably by then we would have it would be a whole new year anyway.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that is, our hearing board discussion. Is there any other thoughts on this discussion?
I was just
topic?
going to add, so for me, 9:15 might work, but I just don't know because of traffic. The previous location we all met at was fine with me. It's close to my house, but this, I just don't know. It's actually going the complete way of traffic.
Correct.
So this morning when I left school, it said 31 minutes. You never know. And that there was no accident. So I don't
Yeah.
want to, I want to be aware of your all time. If we say 9:15, then I'm constantly late. 9:30 is completely doable. That would be horrible if it took an hour. 10 o'clock's even better, but 9:30 is fine. I just 9:15, I'm okay with, but I might be like the linchpin where I'm always late. I previously have been to many of the South Coast hearing boards, and some of them did go 8 to 10 hours. And honestly, it was because the district staff was like filibustering the meeting. So a lot I felt like was controllable if they would just like wrangle it in. So it was the Hyperion debate. So it was the district staff against the county. And so a lot of it just like dragged on because they were just constantly repeating themselves. But then they would adjourn and like meet again and again. But it's like so one-off. I can't imagine that happening here. But if it did, that's how they handled it. They just rolled it on to the next day or the next week or the next month.
Yeah.
It was just on the agenda ahead of time.
So, so at this point, is there a motion to place the item back on the next meeting's agenda for further discussion or approval?
So what's the process for approval? Because we continue to talk about this a bunch of times,
It has to
but
be a notice.
Yeah, I thought we were
Right.
voting on it today.
It has to be a noticed motion that it's going to be an
Oh,
action
okay.
item, not just
Okay.
a discussion
But I
item.
thought we
Right.
discussed it last month.
yeah, that's
And
what
there
was my
was
understanding
no,
as well. But
there was no direction to notice it for an approval.
Probably because I wasn't there. Sorry.
Right.
Oh, no
That's-
problem.
that's fine.
So,
Yeah, I love
So I mean,
March was tough. I had a
to
lot of
me-
Girl Scout cookies to get out the door. So.
I think the other board members, we had a discussion last time as well. Similar topics came up. I
Mhm.
think we're kind of ready for a
Mhm.
motion to put it on the agenda to vote on
To
changing
vote
the
on, yeah.
time.
Mhm.
And it
Seems
seems
like
like
we're
a
coalescing.
9:30 is
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to decide that right now, right? We can decide the time if we
Yeah,
say
we-
9:15 or 10, we can
So-
change that.
At this point, you would just direct the clerk to notice it for an
For
approval.
approval, and then we can
Okay.
decide what we're approving at that meeting.
And do we need to specify that the motion, that the item for approval is to change it to 9:15, 9:30, or time to be discussed? How specific does that
I would
have to be?
probably feel more comfortable to notice it for approval revised 2025 hearing board meeting calendar
Without specifying a time.
without specifying a
Right.
time.
Okay.
I don't know if all hearing board members have been able to provide comments,
Mhm.
and I feel like it would give the other members, I would defer to council.
Just in terms of a specific time or time to be determined at the next hearing
Okay.
for approval of that time yet to be determined. That sounds correct. We have two members, who are not present today.
Correct.
Okay, and so, they would have the opportunity. Let me ask, have the two, can you state this for the record? I missed when the quorum was being put together. Who are the two members?
Vice Chair Spencer and
These are health member.
Okay,
Mhm.
and have these two members previously, at the previous meeting, they had an opportunity to,
In January. I
In
believe.
January.
I
They were
remember.
both,
They
they were both present when we discussed it.
Yeah, we did all, yeah, we're all aware that this issue is being discussed,
Mhm.
but I don't know we don't know
Okay.
their stance on it.
so, yeah, I mean, I think it would be prudent to have a vote on the time to be determined at the next meeting, which will be, when will this next meeting be?
It won't be until May.
May 1st or May 8th?
May 8th has already been noticed, so
Okay.
it will be May 22nd.
And is that, would we also then make it finalized? Like we could discuss it and vote on it and move on?
That would
Okay.
be, what would be noticed.
Okay, great. So is there a motion then to put this on the next noticed agenda of May 22nd for approval? Or as an approval action item?
I can make a notion to put vote or discussion and approval of a date and, I'm sorry, of the time on our next May 22nd board hearing meeting.
Discussion and approval of the hearing board
Time.
meeting calendar. which includes the time.
Calendar.
Which includes the time. Okay.
A second.
Okay, great. Thank you, Member Engelmann. Thank you, Member Supo. There's a motion by Member Supo, seconded by Member Engelmann. Do you have the motion?
Just for clarification, I would like to read the motion into the record. Direct the clerk to notice the discussion and approval of revised hearing board meeting calendar and commencement time.
Yes. Perfect.
Hearing commencement.
Hearing commencement time, yes. So then, would you please call the roll, or do you want to restate, state it again?
Direct the clerk to notice discussion and approval of revised hearing board meeting calendar and hearing commencement time on the regularly scheduled May 22nd, 2025 board meeting.
Great.
I will now motion by roll. Member Engelmann,
Aye.
Member Zubo,
Aye.
Chair Schlick.
Aye.
That motion passes with all members present voting aye, with the exceptions of Member Ross and Vice Chair Spencer, who are not present for today's meeting.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I hope everyone had a wonderful Earth Day earlier this week. There are no petitions before the board today, and this concludes hearing board business for the regular meeting of April 24th, 2025. The next regular meeting of the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board will take place on May 8th, 2025 at 9 a.m. I call the chair to an end. It is 9:24.
Thank you, Chair Schlick.